Okay, and we'll get started. So thanks for joining again, everyone, to our September webinar series, which really focuses on the mobile aspect of the professional services workforce as it relates to, as you would guess, PSA, which is what our specialty is. And I'm going to kick things off with just talking in general about some apps that I've run into in the workplace, things that I found that's useful for my team or customers that we work with, and also for some considerations that we run into as people work to deploy or use mobile apps within the organization. So this webinar series, this webinar will be a half an hour, and I will shut it off after a half hour, the recording after a half hour, and open up the phone lines for questions just so I can get through the material and the concepts. Certainly would look for feedback from anyone who's attending the webinar for any other applications that you have found useful, because that's all about information sharing. So I'd love to hear from the folks on the phone as well. Before we get started, just want to kind of keep you guys up to date with what's going on at Top Step in case you're interested in joining us for any of these events. So we do have our other webinars the next 2 Thursdays, the OpenAir version of the mobile app discussion next Thursday, and then the FinancialForce version as well on the 22nd. But in between, we've got an OpenAir user group over in Minneapolis that's going to be on Friday with our friends at MentorMate. And we've got 2 big conferences coming up that we're sponsoring. The Technology Services World Fall Conference, which is in Las Vegas in October. And right on the heels of that, we have the Institute of Management Consulting, which is in Washington, D.C. So that's October 21st to the 23rd, not the 13th. It's not a month long or anything like that. So as you guys know, working with PSA that we do, professional services automation tool, it's really made up of a lot of components to do project management, to do resource scheduling, to make sure you capture your timesheets and expense reports for the people who do the traveling or any kind of costing expenditures with the organization. But you're also wanting to look at data, analyze any kind of information within the tool itself, and billing and revenue management, the financial aspect. There's lots of moving parts to a PSA. And of course, anything with moving parts, you tend to use a computer, and you're using, web. All of this is usually in the web browser. But there are parts of this that you want to know about in a more real-time fashion, or you want to interact in a more real-time fashion. And in the world of mobile apps today, everyone's got a mobile app. Almost everyone has a smartphone. Everyone's loading applications. Things like Pokemon Go are all on everyone's phones now. So why not things to help you be able to interact with your PSA tool better and in a more effective manner, so you're not tethered to your computer. So if you think in terms of what a PSA solution actually is, being a SaaS or an on-premise install, it's really meant to coordinate your data. It's meant to have a central repository for that data, with obviously business processing logic on top of it. That's why you bought the system. Otherwise, you'd put everything in Excel or Access database. But with business processing intelligence to it, to be able to help you interpret that data, forecast, run reports, analyze the data, and to support workflow. So any business process where there's handoffs or approvals or requesting and acknowledgement, those are all things that the PSA tool is meant to help with, so that you're not sort of forcing things manually and people having to remember from a checklist somewhere of what they're supposed to be doing. So the PSA itself has lots of data, but it also requires, any kind of data entry requires maintenance of that data. So we have to make sure we're getting data into the tool in a timely manner. We have to make sure that the data that's in the tool is maintained, especially when it comes to things like resource scheduling or proposals that have gone out that are now closed-run projects. Where are we at as far as collection of invoice data? All of that is within your PSA tool, or components that add on to your PSA tool. And that, you want to run reports and you want to rely on that data, but underneath the covers you do have to actually make sure that there's access to the data. Of course, the tool you select is the tool that's going to be able to give you that nice interface from a computer perspective. But not everyone is carrying around a laptop, or I guess now the Surfaces and some of the tablets are actually pretty good to be able to interact with that PSA, but you're not always carrying that with you. You're sitting on the subway, popping open your laptop to be able to do work on the PSA and grab on the internet access that you have. So really the challenge becomes, timing. Timing is everything to be able to get to the data, to take action on the data, to enter the data, to maintain the data at the end of the day. And what is always with somebody when they're going around from place to place or driving, or well, you shouldn't do it during driving, obviously, but traveling or sitting in front of the TV or something, you always get your phone with you. Everyone tends to have their phone with them. So mobile becomes something that is an option, an opportunity to extend the system application to a smaller platform for more critical items, right? So what are common mobile applications or common things that I would see be useful as a mobile app to consider? Some of the applications that are pretty common are timesheets, being able to put time in. So if I'm sitting on a subway or a train and I don't have my laptop open, I don't have access to the internet, and I just pop open my timesheet, enter my time for the day or for the week, and be done with it. So I'm compliant with timesheets. B, I'm able to get moving and get home or get to wherever I need to go. And C, be able to keep the data accurate, not delay my data entry where I may have started forgetting what it was I worked on that day. So time entry is a pretty common mobile app. And for most PSA solutions, there is an app for time entry or time cards or time sheets or whatever the term is for the PSA tool. I think the other major one that I see often is the expense entry. And expense entry sort of has that additional pump, usually, that additional feature of, boy, if you have a camera on your smartphone, you can take a picture of the receipt. That's a pretty common plug now for applications because everything's getting so integrated on smartphones, smart devices. So being able to save yourself some time to go green, so to speak, and be able to take pictures of receipts versus having to deal with paper at the end of the day is another common app. And I think time and expense go hand in hand because that's probably the biggest core of data captured by a PSA solution. But as you're seeing the screen, you're seeing the other applications here, these probably are not a surprise to you because they're things that you have to do in order to manage your project or to assign work or to keep everyone informed as to what's going on. So things like workload queues, think in terms of ticketing, help desk, what's coming in, who's working on it, who's got it, is it sitting waiting for someone to pick it up? How do I make sure that I keep on top of that, especially in a help desk situation? Because many times you want to be very responsive and you have a service level agreement and a response time that you have to get to. And if somebody has to run out to do something or steps away from their computer, the mobile app access still gives them the ability to be responsive and inform whoever submitted that ticket, hey, by the way, I'm away from my computer. Here's the timeline, and I'll be able to respond to that. So those are kind of other applications that you don't think about. You rely a lot on email, but applications, mobile apps could actually provide information capture perhaps in a more prioritized and better way than just the big string of emails that come in hour after hour. Task management is another one that I'm seeing more and more in working with customers. And this is really almost akin to the ticket world, but it's more from the project management world. I need you to complete these 3 tasks. Here's your deadline. Keep me updated. How much time did it take you to work on these things? So you get your systems like, your bug systems like Jira, your workflow, they're like workflow, Bugzilla, those kind of things. You're tracking discrete tasks within that, and you're using that also as a workflow tool, but it's also a status tool. So it's slightly different than a ticketing system, but it still gives you sort of project management components that you can manage to. Then, of course, the two big C's, which are collaboration and communication. So PSAs are sort of hit or miss on the collaboration front, I think. Some have collaboration as a first and foremost thing in their baseline to be able to make sure that there's team approaches so that there's an easy way to keep up to date with everything, to be able to share and update same type of information and objects. And then there are other systems that focus more on the external communication and more notification type things, more alert type things. So not necessarily collaboration, but focus on communication. So even though those PSA tools do that, how can you use mobile apps to expand beyond that, the collaboration and communication? What applications are available for you to be able to expand out your PSA tool to do more of that information management? So, we support two major PSA tools, and there's no surprise. Both of them have that whole time and expense mobile app piece of it. You go to the respective stores, Google Play and iTunes, and you download and install that into the device that you have. But there's challenges with these, and we'll get into some of the things to consider. But at a minimum, if you want to try them out, you can always install them on your phone, try them out, see what you think with your configuration. However, what is very apparent to us as we work with vendors and work with customers wanting to use these applications, and it's not just these two vendors, these are just the ones that we know the best, the customization options for mobile apps, because it is a different development platform, is really dependent on what the vendor's able to invest in that, what the vendor's able to make available for configuration. In some cases, it's very limited. Like if you can do a lot of stuff online, a lot of stuff with the software solution, a lot of stuff with browser technology, but then you go to bring it down onto the mobile application and it doesn't translate well. So you're limited on being able to replicate the online experience completely in the mobile app. And that's part of what, when you're picking a PSA tool, this typically tends to be one of the requirements is, and we have to be able to put time and expense in through a mobile app. And almost every vendor, I bet, can check the box saying, yes, I have an application that can do that. But what's not very clear and obvious is, and how would that fit within your deployment, and is there any limitations that would prevent you from being able to use the mobile app, blah, blah, blah. And you wouldn't be able to ask those questions or answer those questions unless you're going down the path of the deployment exercise by that point in time. Now, other third parties, though, when I think in terms of PSA, I think in terms of time and expense. But there are other applications that they don't necessarily talk to the PSA, but they're a component of your professional services ecosphere, so to speak. So things like an Asana. I've seen this in a few places with customers where it's really task management, almost to the point of almost like a Jira, but it's not really a Jira type thing. It's very simplistic task management, load up tasks, assign them to people, give status, get some high-level reporting on it. Very short, simple application that feels to me like a very nice, extra tool to give to project managers, and they can choose to use it or not. But I would be careful with this kind of tool only because the use of this tool could start lending to, well, let's track more in Asana, let's track more data in Asana, let's track time in Asana, and start expanding Asana. And now you're looking at, well, now I've got data in two places, and people are entering data in two places when it comes to timesheets. So there's really a sort of a box that's best defined when you want to start introducing third-party apps like this to highlight, this is where it fits in the world, this is how you should use it, this is how it complements or supplements what the PSA tool is capturing, and here's how it can be used to communicate and coordinate. Okay. Another big one, which probably everyone already has a copy of this if you work with Salesforce at all, Salesforce One. This is almost like a mobile platform app because it does a little bit of everything, and Salesforce as a platform has invested effort into providing an application that is something that you can build upon, that you can customize. There used to be a chatter app, for example, that's now subsumed within the Salesforce One app. So this is where you could get to things on the platform. Now, could you get to other applications that are loaded onto Salesforce through Salesforce One? Well, that would be something that you would have to make sure you test out and see how much of the Salesforce One app you actually want to work with. One that is a system that we used to use was Zendesk. We recently moved on to Service Cloud. But Zendesk also has an app, but Zendesk is also very nice to interact with email. So at this point, the whole Zendesk app, which sounds really nice, was also an option for just using its email capability for collaboration. So sometimes an app is a little too overkill if you can get away with email because you're on email all the time. But other apps I was thinking about that I didn't put on the slide here were things like a Jira app. I do see Jira used quite often in professional services organizations, and it's really a task management or a workflow queue management type tool. And occasionally I will see them load the time plugin into that, and now there's an integration with your PSA tool that has to be considered. So, you know, if you're interested in any of these are all available on your from the different application stores, obviously. Okay. So when you're thinking about the mobile app, so what I run into when working with customers and kind of considering the use of mobile apps, there's always, boy, it'd be great if I had a mobile app, because it really implies that you're going to have more real-time access, that you're going to always be checking things in your PSA tool, that you're always going to be updating data. And the reality of the world is you have to actually think about what the mobile app is capable of, and just more logistics, like what can it actually access? What are you allowing people to see? How frequently is it talking back to the server? Because those are all things that, for the benefits of what it can provide, it can be a kind of a pain to work with. A mobile application that every time you enter something synchronizes back to the server may cause delays simply because it keeps refreshing. And that's frustrating for someone who's just wanting to enter data very quickly with a mobile app. So I would definitely check for things like how frequently does it synchronize? Can I control that? Can I configure that, or can I just make it on demand when I do that? The other thing is, especially with PSAs and timesheets, I've seen, you know, some approaches where when you're working in the online system, you're using, you know, Firefox or Chrome, and you're using your browser, and you want people to have the most flexibility to be able to get timesheets in on a timely basis. So you give them access to see everything in the system. You bring up a timesheet, and they can see the 900 projects that you have active, because you want them to be able to find the information. You use a numbering scheme, and they can look it up very quickly, and they put the data on their timesheet, and they're happy. That's all well and good for a computer-based timesheet system. But when you start considering a mobile app version of that, just think of the data that has to load for it to understand that there's actually 900 projects in this drop-down, and what are the search options that you have on a mobile screen or a mobile app versus an online system. So I think the amount of data and the data accessibility is something that sort of gets forgotten about when you're considering the use of a mobile app. So definitely keep that into consideration, because there may be a connection one-for-one. What you see online is the same thing you see in the mobile app. So consider the data transfer that has to happen. Then, of course, the ultimate is if you're creating data in one platform and sending it to another platform, this is an integration at the end of the day. So if I create a timesheet in both systems for the same week, and they go to synchronize, you know, who wins, or how does it do some kind of record locking to make sure that I'm not stepping on myself with the data. And of course, that's a pretty standard coding challenge that vendors are certainly going to solve for you right away, but it's worth making sure that you do some tests and understanding what the controls are. The other thing that I find with mobile apps is it's a small screen. Let's be realistic about that. And so the small screen gives you that different platform for configuration. But sometimes what you can do online does not translate well to a mobile app, especially things like an Apple Watch. I mean, that's the smallest screen ever. So how do you make sure that the data that you want to be accessible, visible, is going to be able to actually be readable, or that you're going to be able to interact with the data because the screen is a limited size? And granted, phones are getting bigger. I have a Samsung. It's larger screen that I have for my iPhone, and I appreciate being able to see more of the data, but I still can't see everything that I probably want to. And that kind of goes to, well, what can the mobile app actually do, and how much can you customize the mobile app to be useful for you? If you go with a mobile app and it's not configured or not configurable to maintain the same configuration that you have online, things like hiding fields or making fields required, or adding new drop-down options. So if those are not able to translate onto the mobile app, then you're really going to cause confusion for your end users, have a separate set of training. So the whole goal of a mobile app and having your resources be able to put time in or expenses in very quickly and easily goes, you just lost that benefit by introducing confusion. So you're probably taking away from all of this, I definitely need to do some testing. I definitely need to try it out and make sure that whatever I end up using is going to be compatible with my business process, my PSA tool, my online configuration, and be useful for my end users. Because at the end of the day, if you have a mobile workforce or you want to empower a mobile workforce, you want them to be productive. And they're going to use all kinds of platforms, iPhones, Android, tablets, all kinds of stuff. So there's a wide variety of things that you have to sort of consider when you're looking at using a mobile app or mobile processes within your PSA tool or your environment as professional services. Performance really has to be acceptable. You have to make sure it's not dragging and synchronizing every second of every day, because it does get annoying probably to be able to work with an application like that. But I would also argue that you should probably make it optional as well. Don't require people to put timesheets in through the mobile app. Not everyone is a friend of the mobile application world. Not everyone has a phone that makes it easy for them to use those mobile apps. And, they may have a platform that's not even supported by your tool. I know of PSA tools that used to support BlackBerry and they don't anymore. So all different ways that the mobile should be something that should be a benefit for the end user, something that would help them at the end of the day, but not being something that would hinder, delay them, frustrate them, confuse them along the way. So really the mobile applications in support of PS, it's really, I believe the argument for them is getting access to the data, maintaining the data, and understanding what workload you have assigned to you. What are you supposed to be working on? For being able to provide status, enforcing your business process, and really giving that level of collaboration when you are not necessarily in front of your screen or you're having to step away and make sure you're still in communication with your customers. Any mobile app is not a given. Make sure that you consider things like how much data you're giving people access to see through the mobile app. It may delay the performance because performance is something that would be a benefit to use a mobile app. Make sure the business process can actually handle the mobile app. The customizations can translate. I know of customers where they have applications to help with expense entry, but the process that they put in place with the online system cannot be reproduced or handled in the mobile application. So therefore, they can't enable the mobile application. They just can't use it, which is a disappointment for them, I realize, but it's something that hadn't been considered when the whole process was put in place, years ago. And so make sure that there's always a end user benefit at the end of the day, because to encourage people that, hey, this is available. We have picked this solution with you in mind. We want to make sure that you have you have quick access to things, and you have what you need to do your job day after day. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and unmute the line and stop the